Dharma Bites is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
What I'm going to talk about is basically what would society look like if it were based on reality, and how can we make that happen? And this is an important question because the Buddha wasn't just interested in individual salvation, but in salvation for everyone. And it's also a difficult and a big question. So I'm just going to focus on a few aspects of it. So one way in which I'm going to confine myself is looking mostly at the society here in the UK. I mean, I hope it will also be relevant to lots of other societies around the world, but it's just too complex to go into that. And UK society is very different from society in the Buddha's time. So we'll be looking at that. And we'll not just be looking at what the Buddha said, but also at what some modern Buddhists are saying, so that we get rather a broader view. First of all, I'm going to have a little recap on the nature of reality. Then I'm going to look at the society in which the Buddha lived and what that was like. Then look at what the Buddha said about society and how to govern. Then the different challenges there are for us in the modern world. And then finally, how we can make a difference. What does this tell us, basically? So first of all, just having a brief recap of the nature of reality. So it's going to be a couple of minutes recap of what Ashtapriya said in the first talk. So first of all, we know the world through our senses. And what we know, what we see, what we experience, depends on our state of mind. So, for example, it's quite different when we're happy to when we're anxious. And you may well have noticed that. The second major thing the Buddha said was that things arise in dependence on conditions and cease when those conditions cease. So, as a very simple example, the tea that's available in the foyer there is dependent on having water, on electricity to heat the water, on packets of tea, which someone must have bought. People must have grown the tea. You need milk, you need farmers, you need shops. And so lots of people have lots of conditions have contributed to us being able to have tea in the foyer. And if just one condition ceases, for example, there's the electricity supply is cut off, then we can't make tea. Sounds like a very simple idea, but it actually has very big consequences. One of the consequences is that all things are impermanent, and by that I mean think of them as being flow or a process, constantly changing, rather like music, constantly changing. Another consequence is that there's no fixed, unchanging self, no self that's separate from the rest of the world. So the self too is a flow or a process, and our lives are deeply connected with others and with each other. And then the next theme which has come out, actually both talks, is the importance of karma or intentional action. That skillful acts which are done with a pure mind, so that's a mind which is full of generosity, loving kindness and wisdom, lead to happiness and well-being. And what is done with an impure mind, that's a mind which is full of greed, ill will and delusion, leads to unhappiness. And we're going to be looking at those quite a bit during this talk. So, just a few implications of that nature of reality. First of all, as I say, we're not separate. So Buddhist liberation involves liberation for everyone. So what happens in society is important as well as what happens to us as individuals. And also that although mindfulness and awareness are important, we need to do more than just meditate. In fact, addressing the suffering of the world with as much generosity, loving kindness and wisdom as we can manage is how we overcome our self-centeredness. It's part of the Buddhist practice.
We hope you enjoyed today's Dharma Bite. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you.